Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, Evan Jansen. That show is very much live, broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park. Between 9 and 12 every weekday morning, we're also live on our streaming facility on YouTube. You can also watch us back there on demand a bit later in the day. Now today it's Reconciliation Day here in South Africa, and our question to all South Africans relates directly to that. We want to know, how do you celebrate Reconciliation Day? Do you still celebrate Reconciliation Day? What does it mean to you? Our entire broadcast throughout most of the rest of the day will deal with Reconciliation Day. But let's go to Elvis, who's going to give us the top stories this morning.
Thank you, Evan, and let's start off right from the top. Your headlines. South Africa. South Africa commemorates the National Day of Reconciliation aimed at unifying communities and to build a socially coherent society in the country. Road accidents claim more lives across the country as South Africans make their way to their holiday destinations. And South Africa will be seeking commitments to conclude the Doha Development Agenda alongside other developing countries during the World Trade Organization's ministerial meeting in Nairobi this week. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we go any further, let's find out from Lebohang Dube what's coming up in the sports news. Very good morning to you, Lebo.
Morning, Elvis, and thank you very much. Now we'll take a quick look at your sports headlines this morning. Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns aim to secure their first domestic title in the 2015-2016 season when they clash in the Telkom Knockout Cup final this evening. All Bafana matches will be broadcast live on SABC TV from next year after the broadcaster reached an agreement with Sport 5. And two soccer bosses have pleaded not guilty at a U.S. court on charges they took bribes in exchange for media and marketing contracts. Well, I have all these stories and other sports stories just after 10 o'clock. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Lebo. Now, today, as you know, it's the 16th of December, and it's a public holiday in South Africa held annually. Now, the holiday came into effect in 1994. That was after the end of apartheid, with the intention of fostering reconciliation and national unity. The date was chosen for its significance to both Afrikaner as well as African cultures. Now, for the Afrikaners, the 16th of December was commemorated as the Day of the Vow. It was also known as the Day of the Covenant, or Dingaan's Day. That Day of the Vow is a religious holiday commemorating the Voortrekker victory over the Zulus at the Battle of Blood River in 1838. And it is still celebrated by some Afrikaners. On the other side of the political spectrum, the 16th of December is also the anniversary of the 1961 founding of Mkhonto weSizwe, the Spear of the Nation. That was the armed wing of the African National Congress. South Africa will mark Reconciliation Day today with the main event at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. Our SABC reporter, Unati Bunose, now joins us from the venue and will talk to the Paramount Chief of the Khoisan, Gert Steenkamp. A very good morning to you, Nati, and can you just maybe sketch us a picture of what is happening there?
A very good morning to you, Elvis, and a warm welcome indeed. We are coming from you from Port Elizabeth in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, and I can tell you that things are building up nicely here. We are seeing people coming in to be part of this event, and the majority of them are dressed up in very bright and colorful clothing, reflecting their cultures. Of course, it is not Heritage Day, we know, but it is the Day of Reconciliation, the 21st anniversary of that day, and it is indeed being celebrated. And like you rightly pointed out, I am joined by the Paramount Chief of the Khoi people. However, I do have a special guest also, someone who is from the Khoi, rather the San people. We are going to be speaking to him also after speaking to the Paramount Chief of the Khoi people. And these are the people who feel like they are being marginalized in South Africa. I mean, speaking to them off the record, they highlighted the fact that their language is not yet recognized as part of the 11 in the South African languages. I mean, we have 11. They feel that we can perhaps take it up to 13 with the Khoi and the San language. languages. But of course, they have acknowledged some strides being taken. One of those is the fact that the SABC has opened a radio station for them, which they say is very, very helpful towards them. And indeed, we are going to be speaking to them. Let's start with the paramount chief of the Khoisan people wearing a colorful shirt. So you said you are going to teach us how to say good morning in Khoi. Let's get that.
Kai says.
There you have it. It's Kai says when you want to say good morning. Tell me, how do you guys feel about what's the significance of this day to you as the Khoi people?
Yes, it is a very important day in the Khoi and San history. Today it is the National Day of the Kurana, one of the tribes of the Khoi. A very important day in the Kurana history. South Africa have changed, and we as the Khoi and San, we have accepted the change. Although the process with the Khoi and San are very slow, we are happy that we are part of this new South Africa. Now the onus is on the ruling party to make 100% sure that the Khoi and San, before the end of our Honorable President Zuma comes to an end, that this bill of the Khoi and San is finished. Our elder people is passed on to internal, and yet we are excited that we will see before we as the current leaders pass away, that have come to the end. And next to me is our San leader, Tuti Daud.
All right, and let's move over to the San leader, Tuti Daud. A very good morning to you, and I understand that you also want to give us a bit of a good morning in your language.
Konjija.
Konjija, there you have it. So, thank you very much for availing yourself at such a very short notice. Tell me, how do you feel about this day?
Well, I feel very happy about this day, but there's one thing they short. We need an apology, specific from the Khoi people for the genocide. You understand? Yeah, in Eastern Cape, and we still need for them, because with the most massacre of the San people, is specific the San people, the Bushman people in South Africa.
All right, and I'm sure, though, there are some positive you can take in the past 21 years of democracy that may have happened for the San people also.
Yeah. Can you repeat?
I'm saying I'm sure there are some positives that you can perhaps highlight in the past 24 years of democracy that have taken place for the San people.
The San people are very happy what happened in the past 21 years, because we got also a radio station. There's a lot of things who are on the pipeline, because we are finished with the bill now. We will start in January with the public hearings of the bill of the Khoi and the San. Understand? But specific, I'm talking now on behalf of the San people of South Africa. I'm also a representative of the San people in the NKC, or also an executive member. But so far, from the San side, we are very happy what is taking place now in South Africa. Yes, understand?
All right, and just as a parting note before I let you guys go, tell me, what would you like to see happening going forward? Just very briefly.
Yeah, what I should like must happen in South Africa, that president of the country, they must speed up the process of the bill.
Lovely. There you have it. They say they want to see the processes regarding Khoi and San people being sped up, and they want to see change taking place, and their languages and their culture being recognized. With that, it's a wrap from us, and hand back to you guys in Joburg.
Thank you, Unati. That was Unati Bingose, our SABC reporter at the main event at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. And we'll keep you updated as the events unfold here on Newsroom. Now, it's over to Eben with the next story.
Yeah, that's right, Elvis. Thank you very much. Of course, South Africa commemorates Reconciliation Day today. The public holiday aims to promote reconciliation and national unity, social cohesion. The official commemoration, of course, as you just saw, will be held in Port Elizabeth. The theme there will be bridging the divide, building a common South African nationhood towards a national developmental state. Now, President Jacob Zuma will deliver the keynote address at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University a little bit later. The event is aimed at unifying communities and to build a socially coherent society. Let's just look back at how far the country has come since the dawn of democracy.
Where there's smoke, there's certainly fire. Where stones were being hurled, fire shots could be heard. At times, the enemy was within. But more often, it was the government of the day. Beneath the debris, someone is fighting for their life. Some lucky enough to escape with a scar, others paid the ultimate price. Our past is brutal.
You can't do much about that which has happened in the past. We can do something about that which is in the future. And I always say, I refuse to let the past arrest the future and rob me of a better future. Indeed, you must recognize the past. We can't forget. I mean, I've got a back pain that comes from torture and detention. But, you know, I mean, yeah, but I mustn't be focusing on that and then kill the future, to use this word kill in a special way. We need to build a new South Africa.
The old South Africa was violently divided. The victims relived the tragedy at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The recounts unbearable, and the anecdotes too much to handle. This was an attempt to heal the nation, the Rainbow Nation, that is. The president of the day committed to fostering unity.
De toekomst tegemoet gaan.
I do hope that the fact that I'm here will convey a very important message to the people in this place, that the government which I lead cares for all our people. It is the first.
The adoption of a constitution, the preamble unambiguous. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. However, nearly 20 years since its adoption, the country is still divided. According to the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, 2 out of 3 South Africans don't trust other race groups.
One can probably also postulate that it might also have something to do with the fear of the unknown. We do not really know each other. We interact with each other in the workplace for those who have got employment. We interact in a very limited way in other sort of commercial spaces or spaces for entertainment, but we do not interact socially. We do not really understand what happens in the houses of each other, what happens in the religious context, and therefore very often I think one might say it's got to do with a fear of the unknown, really.
According to the survey, income inequality continues to divide the country. Most agree South Africa still needs reconciliation. And today, all eyes will be on President Jacob Zuma for guidance and nation building.
All our goals of nation building, not racial continuation. We believe non-sexism will succeed. Prosperous society will triumph. Unity of our nation will continue. South Africa first. We should always say South Africa comes first. Together, we move South Africa forward. Thank you very much.
Yes, it is still a concern today that 2 out of 3 South Africans say that they don't trust others across the racial line. More than 60% of South Africans believe reconciliation is impossible if those disadvantaged under apartheid remain poor. This emerged from the latest South African Reconciliation Barometer 2015. It was released last week by the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. Now, earlier this morning, Elvis Preslin talked to the head of policy and analysis at the IJR, Jan Hofmeyer. He started by asking him, how should we celebrate Reconciliation Day?
I think if one looks at what our respondents have said in our annual National Reconciliation Barometer survey, is that they regard national reconciliation as a worthy objective to pursue. Almost about 70% of our respondents have indicated that they still believe that it is something that we need to pursue. About 60% said that we have made some progress. But as you also rightly mentioned in your introduction, the majority of South Africans say that we will get stuck if we do not address the question of inequality in our society.
Now, why are the majority of South Africans not trusting one another? What is the reason behind all of this?
I mean, the reasons are multifaceted. I think underlying all of this is the fact that our social infrastructure is still largely geared to a dispensation of the past. If one looks at our geography in South Africa, our settlement patterns, that people still live largely in homogeneous spaces. If one looks at the way the transport networks function, they're still largely geared to service neighborhoods that are largely separate. Where we do see interaction taking place is within the workplace and within spaces of trade and commerce and so forth. But when we go home in the evenings, those of us who are fortunate enough to have employment, we socialize and we reflect on our daily experiences within very homogeneous environments. And therefore, I think what one sees is very low levels of interactions, but particularly social interaction amongst ordinary South Africans.
Talk to us about the sample size and how reliable are these findings?
Yes, I mean, it's a national sample of about 2,220 South Africans. It's a representative sample in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of age categories, and also the rural and urban divide. So it's one in which we have a large amount of confidence that it does reflect the responses that we set out to measure. It is also an instrument that we've been using since 2003, that we've honed over the years, and is pretty much confident that we measure what we set out to ask people in the survey itself.
Now, racism is still an issue. What other areas did you look at that have an impact on race relations in South Africa?
You know, I think a society is a very sort of multifaceted thing. And one of the things that really impact on racism is the question of economic inequality, the distribution of resources within society, and also the extent to which that impacts on people's mobility to transcend different spaces within our society in order to be able to engage with each other, to have contact with each other. Now, I think one must be clear that contact would not necessarily, or increased levels of contacts would not necessarily improve reconciliation. It also has to do with the quality of interaction that we have as a society. But I think the bottom line, the most necessary requirement for these things to take place is that we are able to converge in certain spaces and be able to talk to each other, engage with each other, and also socialize and experience each other's lives with each other.
Now, is that enough, though? Because former President Thabo Mbeki said that we do live in an unequal society. But how do South Africans then overcome these economic inequalities when, after 1994, we have created a more unequal society, it seems like?
I think that to us, it really is the million-dollar question. For the past decade or more, we have really grappled with the question of how do we create a more inclusive economy in South Africa? And I think at the front of this is the question, how do we increase levels of employment? Because the biggest problem that we have right now in terms of our economy is unemployment. And we also see that one of the primary drivers as far as inequality in South Africa is concerned is salary income. In other words, those who earn and those who do not earn.
Now, today is Reconciliation Day. How do we finally start to get this process going if we have failed since 1994? It is a new day in this particular year.
You know, I think if one has to trust in the economy alone, I think the prognosis is probably not as good as it should be. We know what has happened the past week in the markets. Today, the Federal Reserve in America would also, it's very likely to increase its interest rates, which will also, again, have an impact on our economy. So, you know, I think one also has to focus on the interpersonal. One has to ask yourself, you know, do you show the necessary understanding for your fellow citizens? Do we have the necessary empathy and try to understand also where they come from in terms of the views that they have with regard to society? It is very difficult just to make an intervention, I think, for any entity, whether it's government, business, etc. But I think one of the areas where we can at least start to address this question is within our education system.
Mr. Hofmeyer, thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome.
That was Jan Hofmeyer, Policy Analysis of the Institute of Justice and Reconciliation, chatting to us about reconciliation in South Africa. Now, as Reconciliation Day is being celebrated, not all the emotional wounds inflicted by the struggle for liberation has been healed. The family of the late Griffiths Mxenge are dissatisfied with the amnesty that was granted to his murderers. The human rights lawyer was at the forefront of the struggle and an active member of the African National Congress Youth League in the late 1950s. He was assassinated in 1981.
Mxenge's killers confessed at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
That's when we started stabbing him, until he died.
His death left a huge void in the Mxenge family, as he was the sole breadwinner. The purpose of the TRC was to open up the dark past and promote healing for the affected families. But the wounds in the Mxenge family have not healed.
A person taken to court and convicted, you feel satisfied. But a person to just make him apologize, not to us, but to the public, because I don't remember my family talking to Tekutsi, Nix. So to us, it was not a very effective weapon of making sure that we are consoled.
The family says salt was rubbed in their wounds when Griffiths Mxenge's name was removed from the former Teachers College in Zwelitsha. The building is currently used as the provincial police headquarters.
My brother's name being used, to name that famous college, because it was a famous college. We felt, well, at least these people are addressing our pain, because, it's clear now that my brother did not die in vain. There are people who are sympathizing with us. So when they removed it, this present government, when they removed that name, we were so bitter. And they never even had the decency of coming to explain to us that this is the situation.
The Eastern Cape ANC leadership says the name has been removed for renovation purposes and will return to its rightful place on the renovated building. The ANC praised Mxenge for the role he played during the liberation struggle.
Griffiths Mxenge was a leader, Griffiths Mxenge was a member, and he was also a struggle veteran in his own right. And I think we don't have any reason not to celebrate, not to remember. Normally what we do, we are throughout the year identifying even public lectures so that in schools, in society, we are in a position to conduct those lectures. Those peers that were with him during the time of struggle can still be in a position to say, this is a role this leader have managed to play over time.
Griffiths and his wife, Victoria Mxenge, are honored with an annual lecture in their name at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Olutu Matsipane, SABC News in Bisho.
Now, it's over to Eben for more.
Yeah, obviously, we're just going to have a look at what people are saying. Of course, it is reconciliation today, unifying communities and building a coherent democratic society. That's what it's all about, getting rid of apartheid legacies. Babalo talks about we need to reconcile with the fact that ours is a beautiful country. Reconciliation Day. Yes, Babalo, if we look internationally, South Africa, we are doing very, very well. We don't give ourselves that kind of credit ever, though. Junior talks about Reconciliation Day. Nelson Mandela, reconciliation requires that we end malnutrition, homelessness, and ignorance. That's a strong call. Rantle talks about the only reconciliation I'm here for is justice and equity. Let's reconcile economic distribution. Reconciliation Day. Vanessa talks about South Africa first. We need to take hands, lean in and build shared value for all, not the few, says Vanessa. Then Junior's back. Reconciliation means working together to correct the legacy of past injustice. That's a quote from, of course, Nelson Mandela. Madiba, great hero. Let's take a quick look at the front pages now from around the globe. We start in Europe, where the Times reports that ISIS has seized vast swathes of the Libyan coast in an attempt to grab the largest oil wells and establish headquarters to replace its northern Syrian stronghold, which has been pounded by Western and Russian airstrikes. Then the International New York Times says a new round of negotiations to end the Syrian civil war should also align the United States and Russia more closely in strategies for fighting the Islamic State. Finally, in China, the South China Morning Post reports that President Xi Jinping has called for new rules governing international cyberspace that are multilateral, democratic, and transparent. Of course, today is the day of reconciliation here in South Africa. Let's just take a quick look at what is happening around the country. Of course, the Unite Against Corruption protests are set to take place in Pretoria, Cape Town, and Port Elizabeth. The protest is organised by churches, Section 27, and Corruption Watch. Then in Paris, in the Free State, Sports, Art and Culture and Recreation Department have joined with South African Football Association to host the Reconciliation Walk that also takes place today. Also in Cape Town, the rural community of Ashton in the Boland is faced with social issues including alcoholism, drug abuse and domestic violence. The Deputy Minister of Rural Development, Ntebisi Skwatsha, is expected to address them there. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with our look at the Day of Reconciliation here in South Africa. See you then.
SABC, a national public broadcaster with the power of 19 radio stations and 5 television channels, is taking the next step into digital migration with top-spec production facilities. The era of digital migration has arrived, and SABC is ready to service the nation with cutting-edge technology and continue to tell South African stories through award-winning local and international content. On the 17th of December 2015, catch Minister of Communications, Honorable Faith Mutambi, during the launch of the DTT DTH STB rollout in Northern Cape Gamos and Gamas. SABC, we are ready.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom now. The South African Council of Churches, the SACC, will today launch a reconciliation campaign. The South Africa We Pray For at the Regina Mundi Church in Soweto. The campaign will cast a spotlight and focus to the issue of healing and reconciliation for South Africa as a whole, its people, and the conditions under which we all live. The objective of this campaign is to work for a just, reconciled, equitable, and, of course, sustainable society. To also focus on a society free of racial, tribal, xenophobic and gender issues, free of corruption and deprivation, and with enough food and shelter for every citizen and for each child born to grow to their God-given potential. According to the SACC, that is the South Africa that they are committed to since 1994 and shall work for. Now, the SACC's General Secretary, Bishop Malusi Mpulwana, is with us in the studio to talk about the project. A very good morning to you, Bishop. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you. It's a privilege to be here today.
It's a very interesting day for you, the campaign that you are launching, the reconciliation campaign. Tell us about the campaign and how today's proceedings will sort of tie into the rest of the day's celebrations.
Thank you. We are launching the campaign. You know that the churches have always had a mandate and a ministry of reconciliation. And primarily it is a reconciliation between the human person and God and between human beings amongst themselves. But in the South African context, this day was chosen as Day of Reconciliation to change it from being a day that celebrates conflict, the conflicts of the past.
Yeah.
And as you know, Nelson Mandela, when he received the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, he made the point that the task of reconciliation is not just between races, but also to deal with the ills of society, homelessness, corruption, and all those things, and hunger. And then we need to deal with those things. So all we're saying is that in order for that to happen, we've got to campaign for every congregation in every village and every ward to participate and make it their business, because it is not a government thing, it is not somebody else's thing, it is something that I should do, that every one of us should participate in.
Where are we as South Africans? We never give ourselves credit for anything in this country. It always feels as if we like to jump all over the negatives and celebrate that instead of the positives here in South Africa. When it comes to reconciliation and social cohesion, from where I'm standing, I come from as a teenager in the 80s that used to fight in the streets, to today. I think we've achieved a lot. I think we've done really well. I see my children living a different life from the life that I grew up in. But we don't give that credit. Where do you, as the Council of Churches, believe we are as South Africa today?
We believe there's a lot of work to be done. Remember that the Council of Churches represents churches that exist in every village, in every ward. I've just come back from the Eastern Cape where my grandson is in initiation. The lot of the people that I see in those rural areas actually is worse than when I was a kid. Simply because the nature of life has changed. Yeah. And so, yes, we've got a lot of things to celebrate. In fact, we're doing very well in some respects. But the living standards measure that it shows that the LSM 7 to 10, that is you and I, those people relate very well, they do very well, their kids go to the schools that we would want them to go to. But LSM 1 to 4, that's where the problems are. Yeah. They don't actually integrate, there's no reconciliation there, which therefore means that the more we do to build the capacity of the poorer communities, the better will our reconciliation be. So it's not as though we're not seeing what is good that is happening, but we just wish it was shared more. That's why we've got such huge inequality in this country. It is because there's lots of people that have not moved up.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And you had discussions with the president yesterday. Can you give us a little insight what came out of your meeting with the president, if I'm asked?
The meeting with the president was, the president responded to our request for a meeting, which was in the letter that we wrote to him, highlighting our disquiet about the changes that had happened in the finance ministry. And we pointed out 4 things to the president. One is that knowing that we are on the very serious negative watch by the rating agency, to tinker with that ministry at this time in this way is playing with fire, and indeed it showed that it was. And secondly, that when that happens, and we probably might in June taken to a junk status, it means that they will be, cost of living will that much higher. It will have a great impact on the poor, and that's why we're worried about it. But I want to just say that the perceptions, and we said this to the president, that this has to do with the SAA and the nuclear deals is very strong, and we would hope that the new minister will not do what Klein refused to do.
Coming back to Reconciliation Day, I want to ask you about the healing that you're talking about when you're launching this campaign. What is your picture of the healing that needs to take place in South Africa from today going forward?
Talk about a picture. We've been working with the Institute of Justice and Reconciliation, and they've given us a beautiful model of a 3. That most of the things that we experience, the problems we have amongst ourselves, are at the fruits level. And the 3 has got a trunk and it's got a roots. Now, the roots are where all the problems are. That's where you've got your attitudes, your greed. That's where you've got your religion. That's where you've got your values and the ideologies. And those are the things that then yield. I'll give you an example of patriarchy. That patriarchy is at the bottom there.
Yeah.
But then it leads in the trunk level of the tree to disempowerment of women. And then you see at the top level where men feel they're fair game to rape women and so on. That's now the fruits. And we fight rape, but we're not looking at the actual structural disempowerment and the source of that in patriarchy. And the same thing applies, therefore, in the areas of reconciliation, that the unreconciled state is experienced at the fruits level, but we're not dealing with the structural issues, for example, the spatial differences in our society, and of course, the values and the teaching that we do at the bottom. So the churches have the capacity and the possibility of bringing a different type of teaching, and we think we should take that responsibility.
Well, we've had a lot of praying since 1994. Bishop, I hope that you pray for us today, and that next year will be a good year, not the year of doom that the naysayers are saying we're going to have in South Africa. Thank you for joining us today.
We say pray and work. For us, is prayer and action.
Prayer and action. There we go.
Without faith without works is dead.
Thank you very much. That is the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, Bishop Malusi Mpluwana, joining us here in Johannesburg in the studio to talk about their program, of course, at the Regina Mundi Church in Soweto a little bit later today. Thank you once again.
Thank you so very much.
Now, of course, we move on. The Somerset East Museum in the Eastern Cape is fulfilling the call for transformation. It's hosting an exhibition on the heroes of a previously neglected group of people in the Somerset East area who've significantly contributed to the struggle against apartheid. The exhibition is part of a project by the Department of Arts and Culture to transform museums so that they reflect the democratic ideals and experiences of the majority here in South Africa.
Gone, but never forgotten. Their struggle for liberation reflected in these works. Their lives, honored through this exhibition, celebrates the role they played in their communities. Their families are overjoyed.
We're overwhelmed. We've been crying a long time because our grandfather has been sort of ignored. He was an unsung hero. But now I feel overwhelmed that they have remembered.
I'm sure my brother would appreciate this too. He was a very quiet boy, not wanted to be on the show. I remember he was always hiding behind Mr. Mandela's back and just passing on documents. But his commitment and loyalness to the liberation movement and to the government of the day was an outstanding characteristic of him.
Dr. Bantwini Nciphe's family says his legacy lives on through the Dr. N.B. Nciphe Foundation, which started in 2012. It seeks to empower the young people.
He was a very humble man. Normally, you would label him as somebody who wouldn't even kill a fly. Although he was in the struggle, I don't think he was there to kill people. His aim was really to liberate and empower everybody.
The Department of Arts and Culture is urging community members to put forward more names of liberation heroes.
If you go to museums, it's now, the exhibition is about 4 people for now, but we've been encouraging the communities to bring more names. We've no doubt that there are many people who have contributed immensely that is in the history of Somerset East and who have built this community.
The museum says it also hopes that this project will increase visitors' numbers, including learners and the elderly. Lerato Tipa, SABC News, Somerset East.
Now we continue to look at what you have to say about Reconciliation Day on the Facebook page, Twitter page, all social media pages. And don't forget our question of the day today. We ask you this morning, how are you celebrating Reconciliation Day? Now let's take a look at what you have to say on some of the social media pages. You can go to some of those comments here. This one from Richard Nell says, Nelson Mandela, instead of hatred and revenge, we choose reconciliation and nation building. Hashtag Reconciliation Day, living the legacy. Hashtag Madiba, hashtag ANC. This one from Moch on the Facebook page says, communicate, understand, accept, tolerate, maybe forgive, and love each other on Reconciliation Day. IG Freeze at Lomini says more than 60% of South Africans don't know what a holiday is. What a holiday it is today. They just know it's a holiday. They don't know it's Reconciliation Day. So says Freezer. I hope that is not the case, Freezer. I hope that people understand that this is a very important day that we all should celebrate and look back and see how far we've come over 21 years. Tesla says, so whatever you wish that others would want you to do also to them. That's Matthew 7 verse 12. Ubuntu, says Tesla TLC on the Facebook page on Reconciliation Day. What is the day? And here's a picture, of course, of Reconciliation Day as we celebrate it today. And what are you doing and how should we celebrate Reconciliation Day today? That's our question to you. You can find us on the Twitter page at SABC Newsroom. Let's now also take a look at what is happening on our Newsroom Facebook page. If there's more comments, let's see if there is. The Transport Minister, Dupuo Peters, has expressed concern about the high number of deaths on the road so far this festive season. Peters says more than 480 people have already died since the start of December. She has urged the road users to be vigilant at all times and to abide by the rules of the road. Also, the process to select the next Secretary General of the United Nations is formally underway. The presidents of both the General Assembly and the Security Council issued a joint letter to all 193 member states inviting countries to put forward suitable candidates, preferably women, for the UN's top job. And then we also see President Jacob Zuma will address the annual National Day of Reconciliation commemoration event at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in Port Elizabeth today. Now you can find all of this on our Facebook page and of course the SABC News website. Go there and find all the details. We'll take a break and we'll be right back after that.
We kick off this week's show by seeing how Kenyans are paying tribute to the victims, as well as not only how they've coped, but how they returned stronger after the attacks.
Last year, images of the 4-day Westgate Mall attack saturated front pages.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists have assembled to celebrate the peace this war-torn country has not had in a long time.
No conflict that can't be solved without a conversation.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Yes, South Africans will be marking Reconciliation Day for the whole of today, but some sectors of our diverse nation still feel partially excluded from the tapestry. The Khoi and the San people, as a group, they feel their contribution to South Africa and where the country is now is not fully recognized, but processes are underway to bring them into the fold.
The Khoi and San people suffered under colonialism. Their land was taken and their culture and language suppressed. Apartheid brought further oppression to the Khoi and San people, but history shows that they fought for their rights, a fight they are not finished with yet.
People took our water without asking our permission. And at this time, we are still in the same quest for recognition, and we have the same quest to reconcile because of our fractured past that we have had, fractured in terms of our history that has remained unwritten, in terms of our culture that has been decimated, our language that has been denied, and a lot of other things. It might sound like complaining, but that is the reality of the Khoi and San in South Africa, that we have been subjected to a lot of loss.
The newly established technical committee of the Khoi and San National Council is working on getting more recognition for the culture, language and traditions of their tribes. A welcome development. But the Khoi and San people want to see the pace of change speed up.
With the new dispensation, we as the Khoi and San peoples, as the first nation indigenous to South Africa, haven't been included as a peoples into our new constitution.
Included in the changes that the Khoi and San want to see is the recognition of their traditional leaders and the men and women who fought against colonialism and apartheid. Ivwe Poti, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
We stay with our theme today of reconciliation. Now, the dawn of democracy in South Africa brought hope that people of different races will live together, work together towards the goal of social cohesion, where people would live in harmony in their diversity and promote the values enshrined in our Constitution of human dignity, equality, and a free democratic society. White and black South Africans have been standing together during the Fees Must Fall protest, when students marched to Parliament during that budget speech. Also, we have seen divisions during the Rhodes Must Fall campaign, when there was a demand to remove statues of colonialists around the country. Both these events and others that have happened raise the question as to how far have we come as a nation, as South Africans, in achieving social cohesion. Now, to talk more about social cohesion, we are joined via Skype from Grahamstown by a Rhodes University Politics and International Studies PhD candidate, Mamuli Hlatswayo. Mr. Hlatswayo, very good morning to you and welcome.
Very good morning to you too, and good morning to your audience as well.
Firstly, tell us about the concept of social cohesion. What is it all about?
Well, actually, the concept of social cohesion has been utilized as a sociological concept for a very long time now. I mean, if you remember, in the 19th century, it started with the French sociologist Émile Durkheim, where he was interested in looking at the various elements that constitute society. Now, you fast forward that and now look at the contemporary interpretations of social cohesion. That's where now we're beginning to look at the willingness of members of a society to cooperate with each other in order to survive and maybe to prosper as well.
Now, surely when we talk about social cohesion, we're not just talking about black and white people coming together, but we also imagine a society that will not really discriminate against another. Now, do you agree that that is the particular case, and do you concur with that particular statement? And how do we then include everyone to build a better, inclusive society in South Africa?
I mean, I certainly agree with that. Ours ought to be a reimagination of a transformed and very progressive society. That is not rooted in this colonial imagination of the bifurcated state, but one that is open, inclusive, transparent, and just. However, to get that, we need to address the following challenges. and that's the need to tackle the untransformed economy, the need to interrupt the migrant labor system, the poor basic education system that we have in the country, inaccessibility of higher education, and we see, as we saw rather with the recent student-led uprising, and also the poor public health care that we see. So if we tackle all those kind of socio-economic and structural issues that we are facing in the country, then social cohesion will begin to manifest itself from the ground up.
Now, you're starting towards your PhD. So far, what have you found in our country? Are we perhaps a beacon of hope for other countries in terms of social cohesion?
Certainly not. Certainly not. You look at the challenges that we are facing in the country. I would question against that, because we need to, at least that's my suggestion, that we need to look at social cohesion as an end in itself. So social cohesion as an end. It cannot be a point of departure where we start looking at social cohesion to address the structural challenges that we are facing. So what I mean by that is that we need to tackle all those other factors that I just listed now. The untransformed economy, the academic genocide happening in public classrooms in the country right now, the poor public access to healthcare, and all those other factors. Only if we address those kind of factors, then social cohesion will begin to manifest itself up. Social cohesion cannot and will not be a top-down driven process. Social cohesion is rooted in this idea, a very liberal idea, that we will work with one another to achieve collective goals and things like that. However, how can we work with one another when we're still facing those triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality? However, social cohesion must not become the scapegoat that we ought to use now to escape the groundwork that is needed to drive this country forward. And part of doing the dirty work, part of doing the groundwork, is us taking seriously the structural challenges that we're facing. And what does that include? Taking seriously those challenges. Then social cohesion will come and manifest itself as an end product. But it cannot be and will not be a point of departure. Social cohesion is a byproduct.
Thank you so much for your time, Mamuli. Now, that was Rhodes University Politics and International Studies PhD candidate Mamuli Slatswayo talking to us about what he thinks about social cohesion should be. Over to you, Yeben. In fact, let's first take a look at some of your comments today before we go to Yeben. We stay with our theme of today, reconciliation. Let's take a look at some of the comments that have been coming through now on our Facebook page, Twitter page, and so forth. Look at that one. May your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears, so says Nelson Mandela. And here, let us join hands and build a truly South African nation. Wishing you all the best on this day of reconciliation. This one from Belliconic. This one says, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. That fantastic quote there from Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa. Well, right now, Tetsi Monari is standing by with your weather forecast.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. So, possibilities of clouds developing over much of the central regions of South Africa, and also fog patches. So if you're driving now early on in the morning, please do it carefully as visibility might be distorted. Just take a look at it. We're expecting some cloud cover just along the coastal parts and possibilities of rain for Gauteng as well as over the northern parts of South Africa into Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, and then it will shift into Botswana as well, including some parts of Zambia. But what you need to focus on is just over the central parts into the Northern Cape, stretching further towards the Free State, as well as over some parts of the Northwest Province. There's possibilities of veld fires along those parts, and will also lead to temperatures being quite high, just around the 34 to 35 degrees for Upington, and Vryburg might even take it further to 37 degrees. Yeah, it's going to be quite a hot day, but good news for you is that it's a holiday, so maybe you're going to enjoy the sunny conditions or the hot weather, sitting somewhere relaxing. But for us, we're still working, and I'm bringing you this lovely weather. Sunny conditions continue from Pietermaritzburg all the way towards Upington, with a bit of cloud cover coming in Cape Town as well as over Port Elizabeth. Now, It is one of the friendliest cities, but today it's also the windy city. It's quite windy for Port Elizabeth. A wind speed of around 35 kilometers an hour expected along those parts. Now moving towards the northern parts and also closer to the tropics, rainy conditions are expected from Luanda, stretching right across the DRC and going all the way towards the eastern side. Possibilities of some thunder showers here and there, which is quite normal, especially if you're going to be in Luanda. You should expect those tonight as well as over tomorrow. And then it clears up nicely towards the northern parts. You'll see all the way from Yaoundé in Cameroon, sunny skies are expected there. A bit of clouds and rainy conditions towards Libreville as well as over Brazzaville. Basically, similar conditions towards Kampala, Nairobi. In fact, Nairobi is now dropped to 19 degrees. Yeah, it's getting colder and colder along Kenya. Mombasa is still hot at 31. So if you're going to be along the eastern beaches of Africa, do you expect hot weather? Dar es Salaam at 32 degrees. Addis Ababa 21. And just have a look at this. This picture, you can guarantee yourself that you will see the same today, tomorrow, and possibly into next year as well. No rain towards the Sahara Desert. A bit of clouds coming through by the Nile River. But then, the rainy conditions are only expected towards Alexandria and out towards Damascus as well. And your temperatures along those parts are nice and cool. Winter weather, Damascus at 17 degrees, 19 for Baghdad. Yeah, a bit of sunny conditions towards Luxor as well as Al Juaf. And the northern part of Sudan are also expected to be a bit sunny. Temperatures slightly going up to about 28 degrees. Nothing really special there. And then Khartoum will be at 27. So moving towards West Africa, again, here we're expecting rain just along the coastal parts. Towards places such as Lagos in Nigeria, but then it's mostly going to be clear for Mali. If you're going to be in Ouagadougou, we expect the temperatures also to be quite high. N'Djamena and the rest of Niger are expected to be quite hot, maximums of around 31 degrees. Bamako is at 33. If you're going to be in Senegal, expect 31 towards Dakar. Rabat in Morocco is 24, including Marrakesh. And Tripoli will be just around the 18 degrees. That's basically it for the weather. Weather at sabc.co.za. That's where you can communicate with us if you need any more details other than what I've just provided you. Otherwise, stay tuned here on SABC News. There'll be more news to come.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 16th of November. It's the day of reconciliation today. This is Newsroom. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock, and you have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. We're also streaming live on YouTube, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. South Africa commemorates the National Day of Reconciliation aimed at unifying communities and to build a society coherent in the country. Road accidents claim more lives across the country as South Africans make their way to their holiday destinations. And South Africa will be seeking commitments to conclude the Doha Development Agenda alongside other developing countries during the World Trade Organization's ministerial meeting in Nairobi this week. Now, those are all your headlines, but first, before we get to the news, let's find out from Lebong Dube what's happening on the sports front.
Thank you, Elvis. Let's take a quick look at your sports headlines this morning. Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns aim to secure their first domestic title in the 2015-2016 season when they clash in the Telkom Knockout Cup final this evening. All Bafana matches will be broadcast live on SABC TV from next year after the broadcaster reached an agreement with Sports 5. And two soccer bosses have pleaded not guilty at a U.S. court on charges they took bribes in exchange for media and marketing contracts. Well, I'll have these and other stories just later on in the program. Back to you, Elvis.
South Africa commemorates Reconciliation Day today. The public holiday aims to promote reconciliation and national unity. The official commemoration event will be held in Port Elizabeth under the theme, Bridging the Divide, building a common South African nationhood towards a national developmental state. President Jacob Zuma will deliver the keynote address at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University a little bit later, and the event is aimed at unifying communities and to build a socially coherent society. Now let's look back at how far the country has come since the dawn of democracy.
Where there's smoke, there's certainly fire. Where stones were being hurled, fire shots could be heard. At times, the enemy was within. But more often, it was the government of the day. Beneath the debris, someone is fighting for their life. Some lucky enough to escape with a scar. Others paid the ultimate price. Our past is brutal.
You can't do much about that which has happened in the past. We can do something about that which is in the future. And I always say, I refuse to let the past arrest the future and rob me of a better future. Indeed, you must recognize the past. We can't forget. I mean, I've got a back pain that comes from torture and detention. But, you know, I mean, yeah, but I mustn't be focusing on that and then kill the future, to use this word kill in a special way. We need to build a new South Africa.
The old South Africa was violently divided. The victims relived the tragedy at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The recounts unbearable, and the anecdotes too much to handle. This was an attempt to heal the nation, the Rainbow Nation that is. The president of the day committed to fostering unity.
I do hope that the fact that I'm here will convey a very important message to the people in this place that the government which I lead cares for all our people. It is the first.
The adoption of a constitution, the preamble unambiguous. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. However, nearly 20 years since its adoption, the country is still divided. According to the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, 2 out of 3 South Africans don't trust other race groups.
One can probably also postulate that it might also have something to do with the fear of the unknown. We do not really know each other. We interact with each other in the workplace for those who have got employment. We interact in a very limited way in other sort of commercial spaces or spaces for entertainment, but we do not interact socially. We do not really understand what happens in the houses of each other, what happens in the religious context, and therefore very often I think one might say it's got to do with a fear of the unknown, really.
According to the survey, income inequality continues to divide the country. Most agree South Africa still needs reconciliation. And today, all eyes will be on President Jacob Zuma for guidance and nation building.
All our goals of nation building, not racial continuation. We believe non-sexism will succeed. Prosperous society will triumph. Unity of our nation will continue. South Africa first. We should always say South Africa comes first. Together, we move South Africa forward. Thank you very much.
Now remember, we're asking you that question as we celebrate reconciliation today. How should we celebrate reconciliation? You can let us know what's on your mind on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter page. Now, let's get back to fresh news. We're going to get back to our theme of reconciliation in a short while. The Military Veterans Association has defended President Jacob Zuma against the current attacks. The association have also thrown their weight behind the new Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, David van Rooyen.
The MKMVA lambasted those who have organized the so-called Zuma Must Fall protest. They stand firm behind their leader.
We are saying hands off President Jacob Zuma. It doesn't mean when we don't respond to these minority voices that are every day attacking President Jacob Zuma, we are cowards. We are not cowards. It is because we respect the will of the people, that the majority of the people have elected the ANC. And the face of the ANC, it is President Jacob Zuma.
And they also defended one of their own.
The matters regard to the appointment of Comrade David van Rooyen, who was appointed Minister of Finance and shifted to the Ministry of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in a period of 4 days because of a concerted outcry by the vocal elite. We must also advise the markets outside there that they have got a right to criticize the government, but they don't have a right to determine who must be the Minister of Finance or Minister of Agriculture. If they start like this and they are not corrected, we are setting a wrong precedence.
Public Protector was not spared the wrath either.
The Public Protector's report is not credible, as it was evident in the disciplinary case of Hlaudi Motsoeneng. The witnesses that were quoted in the Public Protector's report stated that they were never called by the Public Protector and were surprised why they were even quoted as being paged by Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng. Those who were called by Public Protector distanced themselves from her utterances in the report that attributed their exit from SABC to Hlaudi Motsoeneng.
A similar view from those who supported the SABC COO.
We have always maintained that Hlaudi Motsoeneng never lied to his employer, because we have always known him as a credible, reliable person who holds priorities of the masses of our people and his employer at heart.
Hlaudi Motsoeneng returned to work on Monday.
Back to our theme for today. Organizers of today's march of Zuma Must Fall have refuted suggestions that only white people are interested in it. Several organizations are demanding the resignation of President Jacob Zuma. The hashtag Zuma Must Fall marches are planned for the Johannesburg, CBD, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth and the Union buildings in Pretoria. Organizers say that today's gathering will be a catalyst for a big national protest march when Parliament, during the State of the Nation address that's next year in February. They say there can be no reconciliation where there's corruption. Now for the latest on the Johannesburg leg of the march, let's now cross to our reporter Griselda Lewis. A very good morning to you, Griselda. And can you tell us, has the march started yet? Griselda, I wonder if you can hear me. It sounds very noisy in the background there, but if you can hear me, can you tell us what is currently happening there?
To you, Elvis. Well, scores of South Africans have gathered here at the Nelson Mandela Bridge, just on the side of the bridge where they plan to march in the next 5 minutes from this point until the Mary Fitzgerald Square. Essentially, the message that they're sending, they're calling for an end to corruption. They're also expected to express dissatisfaction with the leadership of President Jacob Zuma. They've been singing since this morning, carrying several placards calling for an end to corruption and calling for President Jacob Zuma to step down. They're saying that action needs to be taken. One of the sentiments that they're sharing relates to the issues regarding the removal of Nhlanhla Nene as the finance minister, and then the debacle that followed certainly of the instatement of Des van Rooyen, and then again Pravin Gordhan becoming the finance minister. Let's chat to some of the people who've gathered here today to find out what message they're trying to send here this morning. A very good morning to you, ma'am. You've joined scores of people who are here. What message are you sending in particular this morning?
I think the message most of us are trying to send is that we love this country. We've been disappointed in this country. We've been proud of this country. But speaking for myself, I've never been scared about where this country is going until the last week. Really deeply scared. But have we completely lost our mind? And I think anybody who tries to appropriate this as a race issue has also lost the plot somewhat. This is a protesting against the removal of a black finance minister. The concern about why a deputy minister who's also black was not promoted. The concern about the DG and his contract. He's also a black DG. So this is not a race issue. This is not a class issue. This is a deep concern for the future of this country across all levels issue.
All right, let's come to you, sir. You're also carrying a placard. You're saying I was born with ANC blood fuming in my veins. My blood is now running cold. What informed this placard here this morning? Why are you here?
I'm here because we've reached a tipping point. The people, the ordinary citizenry, has said thus far and no further. I endorse everything that my comrade on this side has said. We are saying thus far and no further. We've come here not to praise Zuma, we've come to bury him, as it were. And people across this country have had enough. Their livelihood is being diminished. Their rights are being diminished. Everything they stood for, everything my parents gave their lives for to build freedom in this country is being trampled called upon. That's why I'm here.
All right, thank you very much. Let's speak to someone else as well, who I spoke to a bit earlier on, who was expressing concern about the levels of corruption in South Africa. Mama, you said you're here this morning. What's your message?
One message ngithuke kakhulu mangibona ukuthi uNhlanhla nene uyadiliza kwezezimali sathuka sonke 1 2 3 kwangena lomunye kwabonakala ukuthi ilive lethu liyanqila ngendlela kwendeka ngaye kusho ukuthi kuyanqila akukho la siya khona abantwana bethu abanamsebenzi babhizi bantshontsha imali kwendeka yonke lento kuthi nje kulahleka kwetimali ngikufanele ukuthi kuwe abantwana bethu kuze bathole imisebenzi angeke bathole imisebenzi uma kwendeka ngalendlela leni yiwe mazwe ami nje ufuna ukuthi ingcono aphume ngoba sowuhlulekile kude lokunye lesingakwenda ngayo sowuhlulekile ngokubonisela ngeke utshintsha amanansi ngalendlela latshintshe ngayo nyalo angajeli umuntu angendi lutho.
Essentially what the lady is saying is that job opportunities, one of the issues why she is here this morning, also expressing concern about the removal, of course, the debacle surrounding the then finance minister Nhlanhla Nene, and certainly we're expecting the march to get underway in the next 5 minutes, Elvis. What will happen is that they will move from this particular area to the Mary Fitzgerald Square. You would recall that permission for this march to go ahead was granted quite late. They were not allowed to gather on the Nelson Mandela Bridge. That's the permission that was sought in the very beginning, but we're here on the side of the bridge at the moment. We're expecting the march to get underway in the next few minutes. Then we'll march from 10 o'clock until 12 o'clock noon. That's the only time that they've been granted to send their message.
Griselda, that's our reporter, Griselda Lewis, in the Johannesburg CBD, giving us that update on that march and hashtag Zuma must fall. Now, the South African Council of Churches will today launch a reconciliation campaign. It's called the South Africa We Pray For. That's being launched at the Regina Mundi Church in Soweto. That campaign will cast the spotlight and focus onto the issue of healing and reconciliation for South Africa as a whole and its people and the conditions under which they live. The objective of the campaign is to work for a just, reconciled, equitable and sustainable society. It will also focus on a society that is free of racial, tribal, xenophobic and gender prejudice, free of corruption and deprivation, and enough food and shelter for every citizen and for each child born to grow to their God-given potential. For more on this, SACC's initiative. Let's now cross to our reporter in Soweto, Gillian Pillay. A very good morning to you, Gillian. It's over to you.
A very good morning to you, Elvis. Yes, as you said, activities really picking up here at the Regina Mundi Church here in Soweto. A lot of congregants converging for the special worship service that's going to take place here. Now, you'll know, Regina Mundi, very, very historic church. We saw that during the turbulent times of the 1970s, a lot of anti-apartheid groups sought shelter here in this very church. And during 1995 to 1998, the TRC hearings took place here. And the church is once again coming into the spotlight today to be part of a very special initiative. To talk to me more about that initiative, I'm joined now by Reverend Mzwandile Molo. A very good morning to you, Reverend. Just talk to us about this particular prayer initiative.
Thank you very much, ma'am. This is a campaign that in the SACC we call the South Africa We Pray For. We locate this in our quest as a nation to find deeper reconciliation with our past and with our present discrepancies as we are here today. And we launched this program today because we believe the Day of Reconciliation marks a wonderful opportunity for us as a nation, to God's inspiration, to reconnect deeply with those things that makes us better as human beings and as South Africans. And as we do that, therefore, the Council of Churches says there are 5 areas of deep concern for us. The first area is an area of family life, where we believe that we need to reconnect with what it means to be a family, so that that becomes a place of nurture, growth, love and support. Secondly, we talk of inequality and poverty, the scourge that seems to continue to destroy the fabric of our nation. Too many of our people are still living with deep poverty, while some of us are living in opulence. So we need to find a way as a church and as a people to deal with that in a very, very deep and systematic way. We also ask asking for us to pray to entrench our democracy. We are in no doubt that our public institutions are suffering from a public confidence deficit. Indeed, many of our people are losing confidence with our institutions. Either they get attacked, sometimes unfairly, sometimes they become undermined, and our job as a church is to say, if our democracy is going to survive, we need institutions that people are going to trust, and they don't only trust institutions, they trust those people who occupy them, because if those who occupy them do not exude values of transparency, accountability, and indeed a sense of level of deep respect for our people, these institutions might indeed suffer that loss of confidence, and when they suffer that, chaos will take over. We're also looking at economic transformation to say our transformation of our economy needs to include many of our people. Our people do not participate effectively. Whatever our democracy promised, one of the deficits of that promise has been the lack of economic transformation. Too many of our people do not see themselves participating effectively and in a life-enhancing way in our democratic and indeed our financial and our economic situation. And the last thing we talk about is this healing and transformation and reconciliation. Because if we can't find one another as a nation, as a people, our problems become intractable. We have not the ability, nor the commitment to work together. Our belief is that when we pray to God and act on that prayer, South Africa has a better chance to move further than we have been able to move today. Today's moment is a moment to reconnect, confess where we have fallen short, again reconnect deeply with the greater dream of our people that has been given to us by many who died for it. But we who are here now have the opportunity to bestow to the future generation something more beautiful. That's why we are here today.
You're talking about a day of reconciliation where we pause for a while, look at where we failed and look at how we can go forward from this point. But how do we plan to do that practically? Prayer is powerful on its own, yes, but getting prayer into action, how are we going to do that with the churches and the congregants that you've invited to this very special prayer service today?
Thank you very much. We firmly believe that prayer without action is really just words that are allowed to make our people not to act. We believe at the core of this campaign is the intention to work very hard from local congregations. For example, on the issues of poverty and transformation of poverty, we are working from ward to ward to say, let's identify those people who have been excluded by the system as we have it, either be it by lack of opportunity, either be it by lack of education, by lack of simple things that allow them to access the services that they have. Here in Soweto, there are churches who do that. Linked to that is to say, let's work together then in economic transformation. All these 5 pillars are saying each and every area will not change itself simply because we've gathered here to pray. We're gathering here to pray so that when we are from here, we act together. Those who've got resources in our country to make their resources at the disposal of our people, those who don't have educational systems that allows them to deepen their own commitment and action, they are given opportunities. That means we need to have hard talk with one another. That means we have to look at government and say to government, when you act in a reckless manner, that takes away the integrity of these institutions. You're not playing with these moments right now. You're playing with the future of our country. We need to look at public servants and say to them straight in their face that, my dear brother and sister, when you serve community, that's when you're at your best. And when we are then dealing with those things, person to person, community to community, we begin to put this prayer into action. And we believe that there are many South Africans out there who are of goodwill, who've got the capability, who've got the commitment to change South Africa. The last week has showed us that when we work together, there's no power strong enough to stop the momentum of our people to change this country. Prayer is an invitation to act with God for the transformation of this country, and that will take place.
And that's Reverend Mzwandile Molo just setting the tone on this Reconciliation Day for what's said to be a very reverent day of prayer and service here at Regina Mundi. The activities here will start at 11 o'clock and it will culminate in quite a lot of congregants who will make a pledge to pray for a better South Africa. Back to the studio in Johannesburg.
Gillian Pillay, thank you so much for that report. Right now, it's time to take a look at your sports news with Lebohang Dube.
Thank you very much, Elvis, and a very good morning to the viewers. Now, the 3-week break during the Under-23 Africa Cup of Nations has given Telkom knockout finalists Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns enough time to prepare for their clash at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban this evening. The first prize, 4 million rand.
After 3 weeks without action on the local football front, there's no better way to entertain the fans than with a cup final clash involving the two South African giants. Chiefs have won this competition more than any other side since its inception 33 years ago. Amakosi lifted the trophy 13 times, but the last time they won it was back in 2010 under Serbian coach Vladimir Vemezovic. This is an opportunity for the club to erase the memories of losing the MTN 8 final against Ajax Cape Town in September under new coach Steve Kompela, who's still looking for his first ever trophy as a professional coach.
We're going to make it happen, and I'm sure if this game is going to go out well, it will be the highlight of 2015. It might be a spectacular one with the form that Sundowns is in right now, and as well as us getting stronger and stronger here in our camp.
On the other hand, the Brazilians last won the trophy under Frenchman Paul Dolezal 16 years ago. Former Bafana Bafana coach Pitso Mosimane is already chasing his third trophy since taking over the reins at the Pretoria club 3 seasons ago.
Yeah, we always talk. He always tells us about that, and obviously that alone, motivates us, to win. And he also tells us that, as I just said, that the club hasn't won specifically, the Telkom Cup for like 17 years. That really, pushes the guys, that we should try our best and win this one.
The match kicks off at 6, and it will be shown live on SABC 1. Sfeso Ramara, SABC News.
Well, earlier on, we spoke to SABC Sport analyst Kuja Mankwa, and he believes the team to be crowned the Telkom Knockout Cup champions this evening will have to dominate the midfield battle.
Kompela's approach is a cup game, keep a clean slate, and half of the job is done. So defensively, he's got to work on that. He's got to keep it very tight and ensure that the central pairing, whoever he brings, they understand themselves in an attempt not to give the nippy Sundowns players a chance to win. For me, key for Kaizer Chiefs today will be a player called Willard Kasande. He is a player who makes Kaizer Chiefs tick. He's a player who ensures that Kaizer Chiefs played from the back into the middle and up front, because he breaks all the opposition's move. And if that young man from Zimbabwe, who is the captain of the Zimbabwe national team, can bring his A game, half of the job will be done. Whereas if you look at Sundowns, Klompo Kikana will be key, because he's the grafter who is also going to make it difficult for the likes of Abro, for the likes of Spiwe Shabalala and Yayeli Solenyana, of course, young extreme, not to play. And if these two players come into the game with a proper mentality and a mindset and have a very a game, a quality game, then we are going to see a game of chess, because nobody wants to concede a goal. And in a cup game, if you don't concede a goal, half of the job is done. So for Kompela, defensively, he needs to make sure that he makes it tight, and he needs to make sure that the telepathy is okay. I don't know who is going to put between Kune, because he was injured, and of course the young brilliant Kuzwayo, because Kuzwayo for me has been a talisman of Kaizer Chiefs. In a cup game, when he's in on the goal, or in a derby when he's in the post, it's very difficult to score against him, because he comes with his A game. I'm not very sure whether he's going to go with his experienced player Kune, or he's going to come with a young and exuberant brilliant Kuzwayo in the post.
Still with soccer news, Bafana supporters will be able to watch all away matches involving the senior national team between 2016 and 2019. This follows an agreement signed between the South African Broadcasting Corporation and the CAF Broadcast Rights Holders Sports 5. It includes all the remaining 2017 AFCON qualifiers as well as the 2018 World Cup qualifiers.
We have agreed that we will show all African Cup of Nations 2017, 2019. We will show the qualifiers for African Cup of Nations. We will also show the qualifiers for World Cup in Russia. All of them, we are going to make sure that those matches are live on SABC 1.
We agreed on the final phase of the Africa Cup of Nations, the full Africa Cup of Nations final phase in Gabon in January 2017. And also part of the deal is also the next Africa Cup of Nations, who will be played in 2019 in Cameroon, where we agreed on the qualifiers and on the final phase for 2019. This is good news.
Now, FIFA Vice President and head of the South American region, Juan Angel Naupart, has been extradited to the United States to face corruption charges. Now, the Vice President had been detained in Zurich this month on a U.S. warrant accusing him of accepting bribes worth millions of dollars in connection with the sale of marketing rights to football tournaments in Latin America. The Justice Office also said Eduardo Lee, former president of the Costa Rican Soccer Federation, had dropped his appeal against a ruling in September ordering his extradition to the United States. He had been arrested in Zurich on a U.S. warrant in May. Meanwhile, some of the biggest names in Brazil's sporting fraternity have signed an open letter calling for the president of the Brazilian Football Confederation, Marco Polo Del Nero, to resign and authorities to investigate corruption inside the national game. The letter, signed by 127 people, including football greats Pele, Zico and Tostao, was delivered at CBF's headquarters in Rio de Janeiro. And that's all the sports we had for you in this hour. Newsroom will be back after the short break.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere. SABC News. We report, contextualize, and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly, and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful, and top-quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate, and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom. Time for us now to shift our focus to the news on the African continent. The crisis in Burundi has raised further concerns amongst Western powers as the United Nations Human Rights Chief said the nation has moved closer to civil war. This comes after rebels attacked military camps in the capital Bujumbura last week, leaving at least 90 people dead. Months of violence has occurred between supporters and opponents of President Pierre Nkurunziza. That has raised fears that the situation could further destabilize to resemble that of the 1994 ethnic violence. The United Nations Children's Agency has launched mass screening for malnutrition in children under the age of 5 across the country. Yesterday, UNICEF said that Malawi is facing severe hunger due to food shortages, drought, and the effects of climate change. The mass screening is aimed at bringing health service to areas where access is often scarce. Meanwhile, Malawi has been struggling to cope with drought and the first maize deficit in more than a decade. The United Nations Security Council yesterday approved the deployment of a further 1,100 peacekeepers to South Sudan. This comes as Russia and Venezuela raise concerns over the threat of sanctions and possible use of spy drones by the UN mission. The UN adopted a US-drafted resolution with 13 votes in favor to deploy surveillance drones as a security measure. However, Russia and Venezuela abstained from the vote. The peacekeepers will be deployed to the war-torn nation until July of next year. And in the Central African Republic, a rebel leader has proclaimed an autonomous state in the north of the country. This comes as a threat against those in the area who voted on a constitutional referendum. The nation is set to take to the polls on the 27th of this month. According to the rebel leader's spokesperson, the new state is set to be called the Republic of Logone. A draft of the declaration has been handed in to the United Nations. However, the current government has denounced this declaration. Time now for us to look back at the year that was. Across the African continent, it was a year that saw many eruptions of violence and political instability, often as a result of presidential elections or ethnic tension. There's also been a rise in the influence of ISIS on the continent and the expansion of Boko Haram. But the continent has also seen great progress in trade with Asia and India. Yesterday, I was joined by our resident African political economist, Israel Mkhize, and I asked him about the main political issues that the African continent faced this year.
Elections, obviously, they take the highest stand in Burundi, Burkina Faso, Lesotho, change of regimes in those countries, but also the sad post-election events that we were not fortunate, particularly that are still happening in Burundi. We didn't like that. We appreciate the stability that is taking place in Lesotho, the interference of the SADC community. So mainly it's those. Number two, obviously the security question, as you've touched, has evolved. You've got internal and external security, three major groups. You have your Al-Shabaab destabilizing there in Somalia and in Tanzania with the attack at the mall and at the students, and also the realignment of the Al-Qaeda aligned groups, and also the emergence of the ISIS because of the crisis in Syria, which we saw in Mali, the hotel attack, and also Tunisia and Egypt. So those are the main things which have brought about instability and political problems. And also in North Nigeria, with Nigeria as Boko Haram and its influence on the budget of the Chad state, where obviously they had to put aside a couple of millions to ensure that they assist in terms of security and fighting the insurgency of Boko Haram.
Let's quickly shift our focus to next year. 2015 will probably be remembered on Africa as the year of the third term. We've got a couple of elections scheduled for next year. Do you think next year is the year where we break the shackles of this of the scourge of a third term, if we can call it, that has emerged on the continent this year?
Almost definitely. I think 2016 is going to be a bright year for Africa. I mean, we looked at the report of the IMF saying that 7 growing economies in the world are in Africa. And number 2, you have very important agreements, 3 agreements which were important. The first one was at the beginning of the year this year, which is going to carry on next year. The COMESA, East African Community, and SADC, which was called the Tripartite Agreement, Economic Cooperation, and also the India-Africa Cooperation, which is facilitated through the REC's Regional Economic Blocks, and also the latest China-Africa Agreement, which saw an injection of about 94 billion. So that spells very good news. And when you look at how before elections were linked to the whole notion of coming out of the shackles of colonialism, but now elections are linked to the whole notion of economic and fiscal prudence, and discipline, where the setup of the state and a country is seen around the question of building investor confidence. I mean, you see in Tanzania, where recently there's been elections, the austerities which are implemented by the incumbent, that he is really trying to push for foreign direct investment. You have a Nigerian economy which shot up after they rebased their GDP. You've got Egyptian economy which has performed quite well under very hard circumstances of 2011. We saw their president crisscrossing Europe, trying to garner support and attract foreign direct investment. So I see a very good year in 2016. We have to be optimistic.
What about, you talk about investment, and that's almost directly linked to good governance. How do you reflect on the year with regard to good governance, especially the African Union's Vision 2063?
The African Union took a resolution and they pronounced early this year when they said, listen, we have these goals and this is the Africa they want to see in 2063. Now, I was very impressed with their stance on Nkurunziza in Burundi, where there was a cry that there is no transparency, no respect for the elective institutions, and the African Union withdrew their support, withdrew their observers, which was showing that if you don't practice good governance, there is going to be penalties and consequences. And we have seen how they reign in certain areas where there is a problem with human rights issues. You're talking about South Sudan, where they say, listen, you have to come on board with the question of human rights, good governance, so that we can include you in some of these regional deals and regional agreements. And also I'm impressed that well, other people are saying, why did the African Union chair get a medal for peace, which we discussed recently? But I like the fact that the AU has done well to make sure that there is no interstate conflict where two states are at war with each other. As we saw, like in Europe, you've got Russia at loggerheads, say, with Ukraine. But now, or Russia at loggerheads with Syria. But now in Africa, you have those pockets of intra-wars. So there is that emphasis on good governance, which obviously would have an effect on the economic condition. You look in the country which we are currently crying about, that doesn't show good governance, which is Burundi. You look at their economy, they then fall to be the fifth poorest country, if not now the second in the world, because there's a direct link between good governance, economic prosperity, as well as the social stability.
Yeah, that was an interview I did with Israel yesterday to wrap up the year on the continent. Of course, today is Reconciliation Day here in South Africa. But to the rise of certain conflicts across the continent this year, it seems that Africa could use some unity as well. Yesterday, we spoke to a social analyst, Musa Kwela, about the healing that needs to happen in many African countries. This is what he said.
It's very important that as a continent, we are able to focus on healing, because it is the essence of a healthy society. Without that, society cannot be said to be healthy. And so after you transfer your political transformation, after you come to power and there is a democratic system in place, you've got to make sure that civil society is brought on board, that churches are brought on board, that these religious leaders are able to play their role in society. Because without that, then total healing does not come as, you know, you'll remember in South Africa that we needed to have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission playing a very critical role to assist the process that was very sensitive. It was a very sensitive process, and it needed to be handled with care. And so we were able to bring to fore some of the atrocities that had been done and were not even recorded, because the apartheid state did not record these atrocities, and where it did, documents were destroyed. And so leaders of those particular groups or particular teams that had done those atrocities needed to come forward and say, we did this and we did this to so and so. And so that was very important for South Africa. And so you'd have known that the world over looked at our own TRC and said, maybe this is a model to be followed by nations that have just come out of very atrocious wars and very traumatizing experiences. And so what we are saying here is Africa is actually moving towards healing, but it's not going to be easy. Because, number one, you need a stable state for that. Civil society does not thrive under circumstances of instability. But also, you need the courts to enforce the law, to say, here is the framework, the legal framework, the new legal framework. And all of us are going to be following this. Without that, you don't get healing coming into society. But number three, you also need a thriving economy. You know that healing is not just a spiritual experience or an emotional experience. It is also a very practical experience, a very practical economic experience. And so you do need thriving economies. And we do know that without stability, economies don't take off.
That was yesterday. Now let's take a look at the front pages from around the continent. We'll start in Nigeria, where this day reports that the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory has sacked the acting national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Chief Uche Secundus, from office. Then, in Zimbabwe, the Chronicle says that President Robert Mugabe has set a 2016 deadline for all foreign-owned companies to submit their employment proposals, saying government would not tolerate any actions by firms that continue to defy the Indigenization and Economic Empowerment Act. Then finally, in Angola, Jornal de Angola says the private sector was urged yesterday in Luanda by the Minister of Fisheries to invest in the production chain of aquaculture in order to take advantage of the potential that the country offers and meet production targets set in the National Development Plan of 2013-17. Now, have you ever dreamt of a white Christmas? Waking up to snow on that magical morning, making snowmen or snow angels, skiing, snowboarding, or even staying in a hotel made of ice? Well, today we speak with our regular contributor, managing director at the Dash Travel Agency, Zenobia Moorman, about the dream destinations for a white Christmas. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's a little bit left field for us that are living in a heat wave. But yeah. but talk us through the picture and the thinking around traveling to a country to experience the white Christmas.
This is just a typical snow village, where if you live close to you must get your accommodation as close to the slopes as possible. That's where your entertainment starts, and it's very good for family holidays. It is such a different experience. It's very cold, but it is beautiful, and there's so much to do. You can ski. If you don't ski, you can toboggan, you can go on sleigh rides. There's a very good nightlife, good food, but this is what you wake up to every morning.
But now, Zenobia, we in South Africa, we need to kind of deal with reality a little bit. Our exchange rate is at, I saw the other day, nearly 25 rand to the pound, more than 20 to the euro, something like that, which makes it very difficult for us to travel and to go and ski and do these kinds of holidays. Which are the places that are still cost-effective kind of holidays or snow slopes that we can visit?
Austria. We've got a very, very strong ski market in Austria. Very good for family holidays. You get places like St. Johann, which has got nursery slopes, it's got more advanced slopes. And the ski packages include everything that you need. You've got to make sure that you've got your ski hire, your lift passes, because that's what costs you money, because you have to pay that in euros.
Yeah.
So if you pay that before and it's included in your package, it's something that you can work towards. Your meals are included if you stay in pensions. So it is actually still an affordable holiday if you plan. in advance.
If you an affordable family holiday, mind you, for that kind of. But there are other really interesting and some would say crazy things like you know the Ice Hotel or the Glacier Express. Tell us a little bit about that and what makes it such a unique experience.
The Ice Hotel is a concept that they're now on the 26th one, where they build it every year out of the river, and then you stay there from December until March, and then they leave the hotel, it melts, goes back into the river, and then they start again the next year. It's in Sweden. You go for 1 or 2 nights. That's, again, a bucket list type of trip because it is expensive, but it's something that is amazing to see. The other thing is to do the Glacier Express. You start from St. Moritz or one of the Swiss resorts, and then you go with that train, and the view is...
Yeah, the views are just incredible. Now, this is the Ice Hotel. Now, everything we see there is made out of ice.
Yes.
And it's built in a river.
It's built, yeah. The river freezes over, and then they build and they carve.
And for us South Africans that are experiencing 40-degree heat right now, might be a little bit chilly. Eh? How do they keep you warm in there? Do you know?
Yeah, it's all done with lighting and with it's the thermal type of and your bedding and stuff like that. It's natural animal skins, and I laugh because they've got a big sign outside that says no smoking.
Wow, and I'm sure the bars are the busiest area in that place because there'll be lots of vodka and tequila that will be had. But I want to ask you about the do's and don'ts and what you should keep in mind when you go on these types of holidays, or if you're planning these types of holidays.
Dressing. We don't know that type of cold.
Yeah.
So we think we're just going to pack our clothes and we're going to get there and we're going to freeze. Honestly, you've got to buy pure wool socks and thermal underwear. And what we normally suggest to people is that you go hire your ski clothes before you go, because you're never going to wear it again.
Yeah.
And your snow boots and stuff like that. And then travel insurance. You have to take insurance that covers hazardous sports. It's not a normal travel insurance, which is very important. And you've just got to make sure that you have all your correct equipment, your gear, and you've got to know where you go and what you're capable of. We're not used to those conditions. You can't go as a first-time skier and try and go onto a black slope.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I've done that. I lived in Germany and skied a lot in Switzerland, in Newsroom. It's a great experience, but you need to have your wits about you because you can get it wrong and you can get quite badly hurt.
You can, yeah. And the insurance normally evacuates you because they've got to go and look for you.
Yes, lots of Glühwein and lots of woolly socks and stuff like that. But it's fantastic if you go with a large group of people. I think it's one of the ultimate holidays.
Very, very social. Very social.
Zenobia, wonderful to have you with us. This is the last time for the year that you join us.
Absolutely.
Well, compliments of the season to you, my dear. Nice to have had you with us here for the first bit of the new Newsroom show. Are we taking a break? Time for us to take a short break. We'll be back with the weather right after this.
Victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Bulelani Balabala is a 28-year-old from Tembisa, from nothing to making his first million at the age of 27. Bulelani is using his poverty scars and current success to empower his neighborhood.
The church crowd, which were friends that I found which were from church, because then now we had one thing that we all had in common. But the friends that I also had that we grew up together, we had another thing in common, which was the fact that we all grew up together, but there was still that stigma, but then you are not like us.
Bulelani tried justifying his situation to that of a township child, but when precious and small events couldn't be celebrated, he would really question his birthright.
All these things that I call beautiful poverty are beautiful now. But at that time it was a frustration, it was a frustration because most of my birthdays were not even celebrated.
This would grow to frustrate Bulelani at times.
I used to actually cry at night in my bed. I actually used to sit up and cry at night because there's no electricity and it's painful. And there's no TV, there's no fun, there's no being cool. You're a little kid, you just want to be cool. I remember and I'm a boy as well, and no girls even took an attraction to me because who are you? What do you have? Where do you come from?
Bulelani also wanted to prove that his dreams are well mapped out.
2007, I decided I'm going to open up an internet cafe. I had no funds, had no mentor, had no understanding of what computers were, or rather how they operated. I knew what computers were. I had no experience in terms of operating them. But there I was, I wanted to start a cafe.
A printing company in a township was more than a risk for Bulelani, as he had no points of reference.
My aunt was the one who donated the inks, who bought the inks for the two printers. The two printers were an HP printer and there was a Lexmark printer. Another beautiful story about these printers. My brother then later bought the fax machine, but he also assisted in a lot of things. And through all this entire thing, my mom seeing all these things going in and out the house, she's like, "Whoo, I hope you're not stealing these things." Because I didn't raise you to go to prison. And it actually scared her because she didn't understand what it was. There was no entrepreneur in my family. And to date, I'm the only one. Entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. And you can imagine I had to start it at the age of 17, formally at the age of 17. The first 4.5 years of the business, I was literally making nothing.
Intercessor Army Franchising is now a brand that has allowed him to grow as an individual and make a mark that will make him change not only his future, but also of his family.
Faith, it had worked for him because it is faith that has taken him to where he is now.
His passion for empowering young people has grown immensely, as today he has employed 11 young people from Tembisa.
Tembisa becomes that hub, because what I always relay out to people is this: 40, 50 years ago, Sandton was just a bush. But what is regarded today as the richest square mile in Africa, only because 2-3 gentlemen came together and they took an initiative and they took a step to then say that we're going to convert this bush with no surrounding cities into becoming a public metropolis. And then when I fast forwarded to today, it's simple. How I derived that whole entire story is, if 4 or 5 guys can't do it, how much more when 10 or 100 young, amazing people with bubbling personalities, with great concepts and great ideas come together to develop their township? For me, that is the one major thing. The ability to impact other people. The ability to touch other people's lives. Nothing goes beyond that.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 16th of December 2015. You know, it's the day of reconciliation. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock, and you have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. As you know, we're also streaming live on YouTube, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. South Africa commemorates the National Day of Reconciliation, aimed at unifying communities and to build a socially coherent society in the country. Road accidents claim more lives across the country as South Africans make their way to their holiday destinations. And South Africa will be seeking commitments to conclude the Doha Development Agenda alongside other developing countries during the World Trade Organization's ministerial meeting in Nairobi this week. South Africa, we are celebrating reconciliation today. This public holiday aims to promote reconciliation and national unity. The official commemoration event is being held in Port Elizabeth under the theme Bridging the Divide, building a common South African nationhood towards a national developmental state. President Jacob Zuma will deliver the keynote address at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. The event is aimed at unifying communities and to build a socially coherent society. Let's now cross to our reporter Nati Bingose at the main reconciliation event today that's being held in Port Elizabeth. A very good morning to you, Nati.
A very good morning to you guys and a warm welcome to Port Elizabeth, the friendly city. Well, I guess it's fair to call it by the other name now, the windy city. I can tell you that the wind is beginning to catch up a little bit. But big news is that it's all system goes for the 21st anniversary of the Day of Reconciliation. And I can tell you that the president of the country, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, has arrived to deliver his keynote address at this venue. And seemingly his arrival has spurred on a lot of people to come in here. They are beginning to stream in, as you perhaps can see behind me. They are walking in, and one thing you can't miss is that they are very, very colorful, dressed in traditional attire. And what has been very encouraging also is seeing foreign nationals also in their traditional colors, seemingly wanting to integrate with the South African community and ensure that we don't see a repeat of the things that we had seen in the past. I mean, we've seen over the past couple of months foreign nationals coming under heavy attack from South Africans, and it is now time to reconcile and ensure that we build a united South Africa. But another thing you cannot miss, you can tell that the local government, the 2016 local government elections are just around the corner, and I can tell you that there is a lot of yellow from the ANC. ANC members are here showing they're beginning to show their force. We all understand the history of this metro. It is expected to be highly contested in the next elections, and I'm sure leaders of the ANC, without perhaps taking too much away from this national event and turning it into national politics, into local politics, it will also be a great opportunity to also reconcile with their voters on the lead up to the 2016 local government elections. Having been inside a few minutes earlier on, there were a lot of empty seats than those that have been filled up. I'm sure within the couple of minutes that I've been standing in front of this camera, a lot has changed. As I've told you, there were a lot of people coming in to be part of this event. We know that the Premier of the province, Mr. Phumulo Masualle, is also here. We've seen the Mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, Mr. Danny Jordan. He was among those who were here to welcome President Jacob Zuma on his arrival. And looking at the program a little earlier on, we understand that the Arts and Culture Minister, Minister Nathi Mthethwa, alongside his provincial counterpart, Ms. Pemi Majodina. They are going to be the ones who will be conducting the program, ensuring that everything goes smoothly. With the president already in the house, we can expect that everything will go according to plan and it will be well on time. With that, guys, allow us to wrap for now and hand back to you guys in studio.
At Tsunati Bingose in Port Elizabeth, where the main event will be held today. As you know, the president just arrived there as well, and we'll probably bring you a live feed from there as soon as that is up and running. But let's now look back at how far the country and the nation has come since the dawn of democracy.
Where there's smoke, there's certainly fire. Where stones were being hurled, fire shots could be heard. At times, the enemy was within. But more often, it was the government of the day. Beneath the debris, someone is fighting for their life. Some lucky enough to escape with a scar, others paid the ultimate price. Our past is brutal.
You can't do much about that which has happened in the past. We can do something about that which is in the future. And I always say, I refuse to let the past arrest the future and rob me of a better future. Indeed, you must recognize the past. We can't forget. I mean, I've got a back pain that comes from torture and detention. But, you know, I mean, yeah, but I mustn't be focusing on that and then kill the future, to use this word kill in a special way. We need to build a new South Africa.
The old South Africa was violently divided. The victims relived the tragedy at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The recounts unbearable, and the anecdotes too much to handle. This was an attempt to heal the nation, the Rainbow Nation, that is. The president of the day committed to fostering unity.
I do hope that the fact that I'm here will convey a very important message to the people in this place, that the government which I lead cares for all our people. It is the first.
The adoption of a constitution, the preamble unambiguous. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. However, nearly 20 years since its adoption, the country is still divided. According to the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, 2 out of 3 South Africans don't trust other race groups.
One can probably also postulate that it might also have something to do with the fear of the unknown. We do not really know each other. We interact with each other in the workplace for those who have got employment. We interact in a very limited way in other sort of commercial spaces or spaces for entertainment, but we do not interact socially. We do not really understand what happens in the houses of each other, what happens in the religious context, and therefore very often I think one might say it's got to do with a fear of the unknown, really.
According to the survey, income inequality continues to divide the country. most agree South Africa still needs reconciliation. And today, all eyes will be on President Jacob Zuma for guidance and nation building.
All our goals of nation building, not racial continuation. We believe non-sexism will succeed. Prosperous society will triumph. Unity of our nation will continue. South Africa first. We should always say South Africa comes first. Together, we move South Africa forward. Thank you very much.
Now, that's Reconciliation Day, and of course we're asking you the question, how should we celebrate Reconciliation Day today? But now to current news. Durban is getting a 3 billion rand development. It's expected to create thousands of direct and indirect jobs. Plans for the 3-tower complex was unveiled in Umhlanga.
Umhlanga, dubbed the playground of the rich, the affluent area is now getting a multi-billion rand facelift. The Dubai-style mixed-use Ocean Umhlanga is the first of its kind in the country. It will incorporate 460 designer apartments, a 200-room 5-star hotel, and a world-class 33,000 square meter shopping mall.
This project will create 15,000 direct and indirect jobs during construction and 2,500 jobs thereafter, permanent jobs. Further, we have a unique procurement scheme which targets previously disadvantaged individuals, companies, and women and disabled persons. To this end, the project, we hope to allocate 50% of all work to these groupings.
The investment comes at a time when the South African economy is taking a knock, and projects such as these are seen as a major boost.
I have heard people talking about the needs for economic codessas. I don't think we need any of that. I think we need real projects. Because the ideas are there. We all know what we need to do with the South African economy to get it off the ground and onto a growth trajectory. What we need are real projects.
In this current economic climate, when many are talking of doom and glooms, it's encouraging to hear that this development will create over 15,000 people, that most of the speakers have been appreciating what the project is going to do, direct and indirect jobs during construction.
Construction will commence early next year and will be completed in 30 months' time. Linda Mkopoze, SABC News, Durban.
Now, to talk to us about this project, we have in our Durban studios from Ocean Umhlanga, Vivian Reddy. Mr. Reddy, a very good morning to you and welcome. Well, I'm battling to hear you a bit there, Mr. Reddy. We're going to see if we can get that sound up and running there to see if we can hear you properly.
Okay.
But now I can hear you. Firstly, tell us about this project and how did the project come about?
This project came about in the last 24 months when we acquired this amazing piece of land in Umhlanga Rocks, Durban, which is the playground of the affluent in South Africa. And it's the last piece of land in Umhlanga Rocks. It's over 90,000 square meters and it's about 7 hectares. And we decided to create a project that is where there will be nothing else like it in Africa. And this is the project of one of its kind. It is a project that's going to have 460 residential units, world-class residential units, a 33,000 square meter shopping center with the best brands in the world like Burberry, Versace, and a whole lot of South African national brands. And we're going to have a 5-star hotel, which is going to see some of the big international brands bidding for it. And right now, we believe the brand that's going to be the most likely occupant of this 5-star hotel is a brand that's not yet in South Africa. And what is important to us is the magnitude of this project. You know, we've got to remove something like about 120,000 truckloads of sand, goes 7 meters deep, and the employment opportunities are absolutely amazing. As you heard His Majesty talk about 15,000 people during the employment, during the construction, and 2,500 permanent jobs that are so much needed in South Africa. And we believe in South Africa, there is so much good happening in this country. There are so many tourists that are coming into the South African market, especially Umhlanga Rocks. Umhlanga Rocks is an area that the real estate values has got one of the biggest increases, almost 15% per annum. And people that buy in these units are going to really see the money grow. They're going to experience growth that's second to none in South Africa. And the project, given the magnitude, the quality, we've employed the best architects in South Africa. And in terms of our procurement scheme, 50% of the team are from previously disadvantaged professionals. And the project is going to be aimed at people that want the best in life. And that's what the ocean is all about, the quality of life, the opulence, and the brands, the international brands that are not here in KwaZulu-Natal, the restaurants like Hard Rock Cafe and other amazing brands are going to really change the landscape of Umhlanga Rocks. We are going to see thousands of tourists that come into Umhlanga Rocks having a chance to have best entertainment and choice of shopping that is second to none. Their parking, there's going to be 3,000 parking bays. Umhlanga Rocks doesn't have parking. And more importantly is the quality of life. The residents will have a yoga center, a gymnasium, an amazing walking path, and it's only 3 minutes across the road to the beach. So this project of the oceans offers the people of the occupants the best that Africa has got to give. And we believe that a lot of interest has been shown since we've launched it. We've got over 2,500 people that have shown interest in the Oceans project. And in March 26 is the launch date. In January, we've got a superstar, one of the biggest superstars in the world that's going to be visiting the site that has shown interest. And the penthouse at 60 million has already been bought by a leading black South African business entrepreneur. And it's created so much excitement in the real estate business of South Africa that we've had inquiries from all parts of South Africa. And there will be a marketing drive in the rest of the world, in some international countries, but largely in Africa, because there will been lots of interest shown from people from Nigeria, Uganda, Tanzania, and even our neighboring states. What's going to happen here with this unique project is that people that invested by have a quality of life. You could take a lift and go down and do your shopping. You can go in and visit some of the best restaurants that South Africa has got to offer. So the Oceans is a project that is second to none in Africa. And I believe the shopping center itself, given its uniqueness, will rank right alongside the Sandton City Shopping Center, the Cape Town waterfront, and then Umhlanga will have its very own world-class project. And I think as developers, it's costing us over 3 billion rands. It's a big investment, but we have got so much of confidence in the South African economy and the people of South Africa that we are prepared to invest that money to create this kind of a world-class project. And that's what we as developers got to do. We've got to bring international standards to the market. We've got to show people that South Africa can do the best. And there's nothing like this in South Africa. There's absolutely no project that incorporates a residential hotel and a shopping center of this magnitude. And that's why the Oceans Umhlanga is going to be a show stealer. And most importantly, it's going to change the landscape.
Mr. Reddy, it all sounds very good because, and it's a good investment, over 3 billion rand. But how? Because, and it sounds like it's all going to benefit the very filthy rich in the province and in the country. What about the poor? How will they benefit from this project?
Right. Now, this is what it is. The poor are the people that you've got 2,500 job opportunities, and that's where the poor. The fact that we are going to create 2,500 job opportunities and 15,000 people during construction, and that's where the benefit is. And life is such that when the wealthy spend money, they go shopping. It is the workers that produce the goods that people buy, the cars that people buy, and there's lots of spin-offs to the poor of South Africa. And most importantly, at the time when jobs are needed so urgently in South Africa, we're going to provide those permanent jobs. And KwaZulu-Natal, due to the high unemployment rate, we believe that this project is going to help to make South Africa a better place by providing opportunities for the poor.
Mr. Reddy, thank you so much for your time from our Durban studios, from Oceans Umhlanga. Let me get that right. Oceans Umhlanga.
Oceans Umhlanga, the place to be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, that's where we got to leave it now. Continuing now with our theme of reconciliation on our regional slot on Reconciliation Day, the Free State Department of Sport, Arts, Culture and Recreation, together with Nkwate Local Municipality and the South African Football Association, SAFA, is hosting Reconciliation Walk in Tumahole in Paris. Now, the walk is part of the celebrations of Reconciliation Day and encourage a healthy lifestyle and choices within our communities. That event will also be used to enhance and promote social cohesion, nation building, and national identity. SABC's reporter Mbali Sibanyoni is joining us from Paris in the Free State to give us more about this, or to tell us more about this Reconciliation Walk. A very good morning to you and welcome. And apparently, we believe that you will be talking to the Premier Ace Magashule there.
That's right. Community members here in Tumahole in the Northern Free State have come out in their numbers to come and celebrate Reconciliation Day. A number of sporting activities have been taking place since this morning, and one in particular is the walk that took part, that actually started this morning. Now, to tell us more about that is the Free State Premier Ace Magashule, and he joins us here today. Now, sir, can you just let us know what does this day mean for the community of Tumahole and just for South Africa in general?
Well, the community of Tumahole is one of the communities, like other communities in South Africa, which stood up against apartheid and fought for freedom. And indeed, they did forgive, but they never forget that people have struggled for freedom to come to South African democracy. And that's why we are walking today. We have walked 6.7 kilometers in remembrance of Nelson Mandela as one of the unifiers of South Africa and the world. And we are here to celebrate this day and reconcile and say to the people, let's build a nation, let's build a non-racial South Africa. And that's why you see us here with some whites, and we want to still appeal to white South Africans to always observe such days. Very, very important in history.
Now, like you said, that there was like a large number of people that came today to take part in this work. Were you impressed with the turnout?
Well, the turnout, yes, we expected this turnout. We are happy with it. We have organized this event throughout the province. Other towns, they are also celebrating this day because it reminds us of the past, and we have forgotten about the past because we haven't forgotten about the past, but we are using the past to rebuild the country and build a better future for all of us.
And sports has a way of breaking barriers. Do you think that was achieved today?
Well, yeah, of course. Taking young people away from streets, away from drugs, bringing young kids from the white community to play around and sing. And I think it's only sports which can actually unite us and build social cohesion in South Africa.
And do you think that still, like, more still needs to be done in this country, just to reconcile and to bring people from all walks of life together, young, old, black or white? Do you think that more still needs to be done?
Well, we are leaders of South Africa. We are a government of South Africa. And all of us, including the communities, we shall have to play that role, provide leadership, be patient, mobilize our people, those who are still not yet mobilized, particularly the white community, take time and educate them properly about our history, our country, and the way forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now, as you can see behind me, festivities are still going on and they're expected to continue well throughout the day. That's it for me, and back to you in studio.
And that is our reporter there on the scene. Now, security has been tightened at the Union buildings in Pretoria in anticipation of the Zuma Must Fall march in a short while. That march gained momentum on social media following the removal of Nhlanhla Nene as the finance minister last week. We'll see if we can get that connection up and running in a short while. We go to Pretoria for the Pretoria leg of the march. Now, as Reconciliation Day is being celebrated, not all the emotional wounds inflicted by the struggle for liberation has healed. The family of the late Griffiths Mxenge are dissatisfied with the amnesty that was granted to his murderers. The human rights lawyer was at the forefront of the struggle and an active member of the African National Congress Youth League in the late 1950s. He was assassinated in 1981.
Mxenge's killers confessed at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
That's when we started stabbing him until he died.
His death left a huge void in the Mxenge family as he was the sole breadwinner. The purpose of the TRC was to open up the dark past and promote healing for the affected families. But the wounds in the Mxenge family have not healed.
A person taken to court and convicted, you feel satisfied. But a person to just make him apologize, not to us, but to the public, because I don't remember my family talking to Tekutsi, Nix. So to us, it was not a very effective weapon of making sure that we are consoled.
The family says salt was rubbed in their wounds when Griffiths Mxenge's name was removed from the former Teachers College in Zwelitsha. The building is currently used as the provincial police headquarters.
My brother's name being used, to name that famous college, because it was a famous college. We felt, well, at least these people are addressing our pain, because it's clear now that my brother did not die in vain. There are people who are sympathizing with us. So when they removed it, this present government, when they removed that name, we were so bitter. And they never even had the decency of coming to explain to us that this is the situation.
The Eastern Cape ANC leadership says the name has been removed for renovation purposes and will return to its rightful place on the renovated building. The ANC praised Mxenge for the role he played during the liberation struggle.
Griffiths Mxenge was a leader, Griffiths Mxenge was a member, and he was also a struggle veteran in his own right. And I think we don't have any reason not to celebrate, not to remember. Normally what we do, we are throughout the year identifying even public lectures so that in schools, in society, we are in a position to conduct those lectures. Those peers that were with him during the time of struggle can still be in a position to say, this is a role this leader have managed to play over time.
Griffiths and his wife, Victoria Mxenge, are honored with an annual lecture in their name at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Olutumatsipane, SABC News in Bisho.
Now, security has been tightened at the Union buildings in Pretoria in anticipation of the hashtag Zuma Must Fall march. The march gained momentum on social media following the removal of Nhlanhla Nene as the finance minister last week. About 60 police officers are already stationed outside the Union buildings. Now, for more on the march, let's now cross to our reporter, Sipho Stierman, who is there. Very good morning to you, Sipho. And can you tell us what is happening currently there?
Well, good morning to you, Elvis. We are right at the Union building in the Southern Lawns, where hundreds of people have gathered for the Zuma Must Fall march. Now we have a mix of young and old people here. Some from different races and different backgrounds, and they've all come together under one call that the president should fall, and they want the ANC, the ruling party, to ensure that the president steps down. They said they've had enough of the manner that the country has been run under the president, and it seems as if the firing of ex-finance minister Nhlanhla Nene was just the last straw for most of the people that are here. And I've got them with me here, and they'll give their reasons exactly as to why they're supporting this call right now. And if you can just come close there. I see you wearing a T-shirt that says Zuma must fall. Just tell us why you're here.
I'm purely here to register my concern about the beautiful country, South Africa. As everyone's aware as to how our president is conducting himself and how the ruling party is actually reluctant to take drastic and corrective measures against our president. Look what has happened to the economy of our country because of his uncalled for calling.
All right, so concerns around the economy. We've got another one here who's going to give us his reasons.
I think it's like you said. I think he's finally created the straw that I think is going to break this camel's back. His decisions are affecting everyone, not just a minority.
Yeah, but then what I'd like to know is that ultimately that decision has to be made by the ruling party. So do you think this is going to make a difference at all?
As protesting? Yes. I like to think, we live in a democracy, and this year has been a pretty big year for protests with a lot of things happening in this country. And I like to believe it.
And you say you want to add to this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 3 finance ministers in a week, it shows that Zuma is answerable to no one, and that absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And I know it's a cliche thing to say, but in this instance, it really is a truth when he's heard.
But to be fair to the president, then he did perhaps change Van Rooyen and put back a respected man called Pravin Gordhan. So does that not satisfy you?
The reason is there was no actual reason for appointing Van Rooyen on the day that he made such a decision. There was other rumors to say why he did what he did, but everyone's nullifying his true reason and his true intention. So no one actually knows what's going on. So it's up to the executive council.
Well, that's the hashtag Zuma Must Fall campaign that's happening in Pretoria as well. But as we indicated earlier, we're going to cross live to Port Elizabeth on Reconciliation Day, where the president is about to enter the building. He's right now there. Let's cross there live.